The air inside the Zilkar Dominion's grand chamber smelled faintly of metal and something acrid, like burnt citrus. Captain Sarah Mitchell kept her expression neutral as she led her team into the vast hall, its walls etched with alien glyphs that pulsed dimly. At the far end, seated on a raised platform, were the Zilkar. They were a reptilian species, tall and sinewy, their jade-green scales ridged with golden plating that marked status. Their leader, Overlord Varen, leaned forward, his talons clicking against the armrest of his elaborate throne. His slitted eyes gleamed with something Sarah had seen too many times from overconfident adversaries: contempt. Sarah didn't let it rattle her. Behind her, Dr. Mark Reynolds, her chief scientist, adjusted the device strapped to his forearm, likely analyzing the alien atmosphere for contaminants. Next to him, Lisa Taylor, the team's linguist and cultural specialist, whispered an observation Sarah barely caught. "They're testing us." And then there was Jonah Jinx Carter, their wildcard engineer, standing a little too casually with his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, his grin a shade too confident for Sarah's peace of mind. Varen's voice was a deep, guttural rasp. "You are the first humans to stand before the Dominion's High Council, a species of flesh and fragile bones, daring to negotiate terms with us." His forked tongue flickered. "Tell me, Captain, do you understand what it means to stand in this chamber?" Sarah clasped her hands behind her back. "It means we're here to talk, trade, establish something useful for both our people." Varen's thin lips curled upward, revealing jagged teeth. "It means you are being judged." A murmur rippled through the Zilkar gathered along the chamber's perimeter. Some bared their fangs in emotion that might have been amusement or hunger. Lisa inhaled sharply. Mark's fingers tightened on his scanner. Sarah remained still. "And what exactly is this judgment based on?" Varen gestured, and a Zilkar attendant stepped forward, carrying a sleek, obsidian-colored chalice. The liquid inside was deep violet, shimmering under the chamber's pale light. The Zilkar warrior held it aloft as Varen spoke. "Vortha venom," he declared, his voice rich with pride. "The most potent neurotoxin in the sector. No species has ever withstood its touch. Not the Gerlach, not the Vathari, certainly not humans." Sarah felt Lisa tense beside her. Mark's mouth pressed into a thin line, his mind already racing through probabilities and chemistry. Varen's smirk widened. "Drink and survive. Prove that your species is worthy of standing before us." Sarah exhaled slowly. This was an old game: posturing, dominance, forcing the lesser party to submit. The Zilkar weren't interested in trade, they wanted a spectacle, a public failure. She was about to reject the challenge outright, no negotiation was worth dying over, when Jonah Carter laughed. It wasn't nervous laughter, not forced, genuine amusement. Sarah barely turned her head before Jonah took a single, easy step forward. His brown eyes gleamed with mischief. "That's it?" he asked, nodding toward the chalice. "You call that a challenge?" The chamber went still. Lisa shot him a warning look. Mark muttered something under his breath that sounded like "we are all going to die." Jonah ignored them. He reached for the chalice with the confidence of a man picking up a morning cup of coffee. The Zilkar warrior hesitated, looking to Varen for confirmation. The Overlord's eyes narrowed. "You accept?" Jonah's grin widened. "Of course." He lifted the chalice and, before Sarah could stop him, downed the entire thing in one gulp. The silence was absolute. Zilkar warriors leaned forward. Attendants clutched their weapons. The Overlord's expression barely flickered, but his fingers clenched against his throne. Mark's scanner beeped wildly. Lisa's hand hovered near her belt, ready to pull Jonah back if he collapsed. Sarah fought the instinct to lunge forward and slap the chalice from his hands. Too late for that now. And Jonah? Jonah smacked his lips, tilted his head as if considering, and burped. "Not bad," he said. "Tastes kinda like blackberry schnapps. Got anything stronger?" A Zilkar warrior actually hissed in shock. Another muttered something in their native tongue, too fast for Lisa to immediately translate. The meaning was clear anyway. This should not be possible. Varen's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught the subtle twitch in his jaw. The Overlord was rattled. Jonah rolled his shoulders. "Well, I drank it. You want to give me another round? Or are we good?" The room erupted into hushed, frantic murmuring. Sarah didn't need Lisa's expertise to know what they were thinking. The humans had survived something they weren't supposed to. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. "We just shattered their entire world view." Mark, still frantically analyzing the data on his scanner, muttered, "I don't even know how you're still standing." Jonah flashed him a wink. "Good gut bacteria, Doc. You wouldn't get it." Varen rose from his throne. The chamber quieted instantly. He studied Jonah like one might examine an unfamiliar predator. "Fascinating." His voice had lost its casual mockery. "Tell me, human, how?" Sarah took a step forward, seizing the moment. "Maybe we're stronger than you thought." Varen didn't reply immediately. His slitted eyes flickered from Jonah to Sarah to Mark's scanner still flashing data. A careful calculation played out behind his expression. Sarah knew what he was thinking. The Zilkar's greatest weapon, their invincible poison, had just failed. And humans? Humans had laughed it off. Sarah crossed her arms, leveling her gaze with Varen's. "So, still think we're weak?" For the first time, the Overlord had no immediate answer. And Sarah knew. The game had changed. Silence stretched across the grand chamber of the Zilkar Dominion like a drawn blade. Every reptilian eye was locked on Jonah Carter, who stood in the center of the room with an empty chalice in one hand and a satisfied smirk on his face. A full minute passed. Jonah didn't collapse, didn't seize up or foam at the mouth. He just existed, perfectly healthy, blinking at the gathered aliens as if unaware he had just shattered their expectations of reality. Sarah Mitchell had spent years navigating delicate interstellar negotiations, balancing between diplomacy and survival. She had seen power struggles, cultural clashes, and threats both subtle and overt. But she had never seen an alien warlord stare in such mute, genuine bafflement. Varen, usually composed in his cold arrogance, spoke at last. "You still stand." Jonah squinted at him. "Yeah?" He rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. I thought this stuff was supposed to be deadly." He gave the chalice an experimental shake, as if checking for hidden compartments. "You sure you gave me the real thing?" A ripple of horrified murmurs swept through the chamber. The Zilkar warriors exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a towering brute with jet-black scales, took a cautious step backward, as though fearing contamination. Lisa Taylor, their linguist and cultural specialist, exhaled slowly beside Sarah. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He just insulted their deadliest poison." Sarah resisted the urge to rub her temples. Jonah had done more than that. He had thrown the Zilkar's entire perception of biological superiority into freefall. Dr. Mark Reynolds was still frantically scanning Jonah, his portable analyzer blinking warnings in 3 different colors. He muttered under his breath, "This is insane." Sarah leaned toward him. "Tell me something I don't know." Mark barely acknowledged her, his eyes locked on the data flooding his display. The venom contains neurotoxic proteins designed to attack a species' central nervous system. It should have triggered immediate paralysis. Sarah's gaze flicked to Jonah, who looked less paralyzed and more mildly curious. "And?" she prompted. Mark's jaw tensed. "Somehow, it's not binding to his nervous system the way it should. It's interacting with his gut microbiome instead." Jonah, overhearing, grinned. "Told you. Good gut bacteria." Sarah shot him a warning look. Now was not the time. Varen took a slow step forward, his golden-plated talons clicking against the floor. His expression had shifted from amusement to something far more dangerous. "You mock us." His voice was low, measured. "You pretend immunity, but no species withstands Vortha venom." Jonah held up his hands. Hey, I didn't say I was immune, just saying if that was supposed to kill me, it—" He stopped, mid-sentence. Sarah's heart lurched. Oh no. Jonah blinked rapidly, frowned. Then, with absolutely no self-preservation instinct whatsoever, he muttered, "Whoa." My fingers feel weird. Mark cursed and lunged toward him. "Sit. Down. Now." Lisa caught Jonah's arm as he staggered slightly. His pupils had dilated, his breathing had shifted, and a faint sheen of sweat had formed on his brow. Jonah, however, looked way too entertained by the situation. "Whoa, this is kinda nice. I feel floaty." Mark's hands flew over his scanner. "Damn it, Jonah, it's a stimulant. It's not killing you, but your body is treating it like a hyper-concentrated adrenaline shot." Jonah nodded thoughtfully. "Oh, cool. That explains why I suddenly want to run a marathon." Sarah resisted the very real urge to throw him out the nearest airlock. Varen's slitted eyes narrowed. "It affects you." Sarah knew that tone. The Overlord was recalculating. Jonah straightened, still grinning despite the clear chemical chaos happening inside him. "Yeah, but not in the way you wanted." He shot finger guns at the Overlord. "Appreciate the free high, though." Lisa audibly smacked her forehead. A whisper slithered through the assembled Zilkar. Confusion, disbelief, unease. Sarah saw it, the tiny crack in their unwavering certainty. This poison had been their ultimate, undisputed biological weapon, the foundation of their fearsome reputation. Yet a human had drunk it and lived. No, thrived. Lisa spoke, her voice carrying just enough curiosity to mask the tactical precision beneath it. "Do Zilkar warriors drink Vortha venom?" Varen's gaze snapped to her. He hesitated. Sarah pounced. "You don't, do you?" The silence was answer enough. Lisa took a slow, deliberate step forward. "So what you're saying is, humans can drink something that even the mighty Zilkar wouldn't dare consume?" The reaction was immediate. Warriors stiffened. Attendants shifted uneasily. Even the Overlord's golden-plated talons flexed against his armrest. Sarah felt a flicker of satisfaction. The game had officially changed. Jonah, ever helpful, folded his arms and nodded sagely. "Sounds to me like we're the scarier species." A warrior near the front hissed, his scales bristling. Another muttered something in Zilkar that Lisa quietly translated. "Impossible. They are soft things." Sarah took the final step needed to tip the scale. She turned back to Varen, meeting his golden gaze with unshaken confidence. "Maybe we're not as weak as you thought." The Overlord remained silent, unreadable, his mind working through the implications. Finally, he exhaled through his nostrils, the sound sharp and controlled. Fascinating. Sarah recognized the shift immediately. The Zilkar were warriors. They respected strength, adaptability, and above all, survivors. Jonah, in all his reckless, chaos-fueled glory, had just proven humanity was all three. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "So, are we ready to talk now?" Varen studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he inclined his head. Sarah knew it wasn't submission, but it was a start. A heavy silence hung over the Zilkar Dominion's grand chamber. Overlord Varen sat motionless on his throne, taloned fingers curled against the armrests. His golden eyes flicked from Jonah Carter, who still looked irritatingly alive, to Sarah Mitchell, who stood with a calm confidence that hadn't been there before. Something had shifted. The humans had arrived as supplicants, outsiders seeking diplomacy. Now, in the span of a single, reckless act, they had become an enigma. Lisa Taylor, ever the strategist, let the moment linger. She understood that silence in negotiations was a weapon, one the Zilkar had wielded expertly before. Now, it was being used against them. Finally, Varen spoke. His voice was slower now, measured. "You are not what we expected." Sarah tilted her head slightly. "We get that a lot." A murmur rippled through the assembled Zilkar. Their rigid, almost ceremonial posture had changed. Less certainty, more caution. The humans were no longer a known quantity, and that made them dangerous. The challenge reversed. Varen's golden gaze flicked toward the chalice still in Jonah's grip. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Lisa stepped forward. "A question, Overlord." The Zilkar leader turned his eyes on her. Lisa didn't flinch. "Have you ever drunk Vortha venom yourself?" A slight, almost imperceptible pause. Then, a low hiss from the warriors lining the chamber's edges. The Zilkar were a proud species, their entire empire built on power and dominance. Yet here was a human, calmly questioning their own traditions. Varen's talons flexed. "It is not meant for us." Lisa's brows lifted, her expression one of genuine curiosity. "Why?" Mark Reynolds, ever the scientist, took the opening. "Because it's a bioweapon, isn't it?" He tapped at his wrist display, scanning the venom's breakdown. "Designed to disable or kill enemy species, not something you'd drink for fun." The gathered Zilkar shifted. The tension in the room had taken on a new, sharper edge. Jonah, still riding whatever chemical chaos was happening in his bloodstream, grinned and twirled the chalice in his hand. "Well, that's interesting." Varen's expression hardened. "Do you mean to imply cowardice?" Sarah stepped in before Jonah could push things too far. She smiled, but it was sharp, calculated. "Not at all. Just that humans don't fear what you expected us to." The words landed like a blade through old armor. The Zilkar had always relied on the certainty of their superiority. The venom was a symbol, a testament to their control over life and death. And now, that control was gone. The science of defiance. Mark's fingers flew across his wrist display. His expression shifted from intense focus to dawning realization. "Captain." He turned the screen toward Sarah. The data flashed rapidly, alien compounds breaking down into unexpectedly harmless byproducts. Jonah's system neutralized the venom almost immediately. Sarah frowned. "You said it was acting as a stimulant." "It is, but only temporarily. His metabolism is processing it into something completely different. It's not killing him because it can't." Mark's gaze flicked toward the Zilkar warriors. "Which means we can neutralize it entirely." Varen's head snapped up. "Lies." Mark met his gaze without flinching. "Test it yourself." A low, uneasy murmur spread through the warriors. Some glanced at the chalice. Others exchanged looks that, to Sarah, were a mix of fear and curiosity. Lisa, sensing an opportunity, pressed forward. "This venom is your empire's greatest weapon, isn't it?" Varen's jaw tightened. "It is the tool of conquest." Sarah smiled. "Not anymore." The Zilkar warriors stiffened. Varen's fingers curled against his throne. He understood what she was saying. If humanity could resist their deadliest weapon, if they could eliminate it altogether, the balance of power shifted. Forever. And Sarah had every intention of using that to her advantage. The weight of a broken threat. Varen exhaled slowly. "You propose an impossible thing." Mark shook his head. "Not impossible, just inconvenient for you." Sarah stepped forward, her tone even. "You expected us to die. Instead, we're offering you something else, a choice." The gathered warriors stared at her, their golden eyes gleaming in the dim chamber light. Lisa picked up the thread effortlessly. You've built your reputation on the certainty that no species could withstand your venom. Now, that certainty is gone. Jonah, finally stabilizing from his venom-induced high, leaned on Mark's shoulder. You could try poisoning us again, but, I'd probably just get another buzz. Sarah barely resisted kicking him. Varen's expression didn't change, but the subtle shift in his posture told her everything. He was thinking, calculating. The humans weren't what he had expected, and that uncertainty made them more valuable alive than dead. Finally, after a long, tense silence, Varen spoke. What do you propose? Overlord Varen was not accustomed to uncertainty. His kind, the Zilkar, had ruled through calculated intimidation for centuries. Their conquests were swift. Their enemies crumbled under the weight of certainty. Certainty that the Zilkar were the dominant species. Certainty that no creature could resist their deadliest toxin. Now, that certainty lay in ruins, and the humans stood before him, waiting. The chamber was silent, every golden-eyed warrior watching their overlord for a response. Varen's mind raced. If the venom was useless against these creatures, the Zilkar's entire strategy for expansion had to be re-evaluated. More than that, these humans had neutralized his greatest weapon without even trying. He could not kill them. Not now. Not when their existence had just become more valuable than their deaths. Sarah Mitchell could see it in his expression, the moment he realized he had no winning move. So she smiled. You asked what we propose. She took a deliberate step forward. We're offering you a way forward, a new kind of power. A redefinition of strength. Varen's slitted eyes narrowed. You claim to be stronger than us. Lisa Taylor shook her head. Number just different. And difference is what will keep your empire alive. Varen leaned forward, his talons flexing. Explain. Sarah gestured subtly toward Mark Reynolds, who brought up a holographic projection of his earlier scans. The glowing symbols flickered in the dim chamber, displaying chemical breakdowns and genetic adaptations. Mark spoke with the confidence of someone who had already solved the problem. Your venom isn't a guaranteed kill switch anymore, but that doesn't make it worthless. It means you've been using it the wrong way. Varen's eyes narrowed dangerously. Sarah pressed on. Right now, your empire expands through fear, through destruction. But fear is a fragile currency. It works until it doesn't. She glanced toward Jonah, whose reckless survival had shattered that illusion. What we're offering is something better. Resilience. Lisa picked up the thread smoothly. Your venom isn't just a weapon. It could be a cure, a resource, a biological key. Mark nodded. If our immune system could adapt to it in minutes, imagine what your species could achieve with the right knowledge. A ripple of unease swept through the warriors. This was not how their world worked. And yet, Varen said nothing, but his claws tapped against the throne's armrest. A sign of calculation. Jonah, of course, couldn't resist adding. Also, you could totally market it as an energy drink. Vortha Venom. Feel the burn. Sarah smacked his arm. Mark groaned. Lisa looked like she wanted to die. Varen, however, let out a low, dangerous chuckle. Good. He was listening. The final offer. Sarah let the moment settle before delivering the final blow. This is what we're proposing, Overlord. A trade deal. Knowledge for knowledge. She gestured to Mark's display. Humanity has something your empire has never encountered before, an immune system unlike any in the galaxy. Lisa nodded. We can help you study resilience, adaptation. In return, we gain access to your medical advancements, your biotechnologies. Jonah grinned. And we all walk out of here alive. Big bonus. The room stilled. Sarah could see the resistance in Varen's posture, the way his instincts fought against the idea of negotiating with a species that should have been beneath him. But the Zilkar were not fools. Their empire had survived not just through strength, but through pragmatism, and Sarah had forced him to see the future, a future where humanity was not a conquered species, but an equal force. Varen exhaled slowly. Then, after a long moment, he nodded. "Your terms are acceptable." The gathered warriors stiffened, their shock barely contained. The Overlord had spoken. The deal was made. Sarah allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "Then we have an agreement." A new dawn. The tension in the chamber didn't disappear. The Zilkar were still wary, still unsettled. But the humans had done something that no species had managed before. They had forced the Dominion to change. As Varen stood, towering over them, he regarded Sarah with something almost like respect. "You will leave unharmed," he said. "But understand this. You are the first to challenge us and walk away. Jonah, ever the wild card, grinned. Won't be the last." Varen's golden eyes gleamed. "I suspect not." With that, the humans turned, stepping out of the chamber and into the unknown. They had come seeking peace. Instead, they had redefined war. And humanity had just taken its first step towards something far greater.